Okay, Unit 1, test review. Number 1, identify the domain, that's talking about x, of the function f of x is the square root of 8 minus 2x. Remember what we said, this stuff cannot be negative, so we state that by saying it can be greater than or equal to 0. Subtract 8, negative 2x is greater than or negative 8, divide by negative 2, divide by negative 2. If you divide an inequality by a negative, you got to flip the inequality. And there's where we would have it. So on a number line, it'd be 4. X can be less than or equal to 4. So it would look like this. So it'd be negative infinity all the way up to 4 with a bracket. And that would match letter B. Number 2, identify the domain of the function f of x equals this. All right. Well, if we were to look at this and actually remember what the graph looks like, we would actually be able to go like this. We'd graph it, 1 to the right, down 3, 1, 1, 2, 3. And then we could actually get a little visual representation of what it is. It's a parabola that goes on forever in both directions. And so that'd be letter D. That's one way of doing it. The other way of looking at it is there's no zeros in the denominator, and there's no square roots, which means all real numbers for the domain, which also would give us letter D. Number 3, what's the domain of this? Well, there is no, I'm not going to graph this, so I'm going to look at this and realize, hey, I can factor this, x minus 7, x plus 3, which tells me x cannot equal 7 or negative 3. And if I looked at a number line, I would say negative 3 is a possible thing it can't be, and 7 is a possible thing it cannot be. So I need to describe this space, and this space. So this space would be negative infinity all the way up to negative 3, doesn't include it, together with this space, which is negative 3 all the way to 7, does not include the 7 or the negative 3, together with this space, 7 all the way to infinity, which would take us to letter A. Number 4. This says identify the domain of the function. Well, remember what domain is. How far left does it go? How far right does it go? Well, if this goes left and left forever and ever, it's going to be negative infinity to the left. And then it gets to the y-axis, which is 0. And it gets there, so that would be a bracket. So that would be letter C. Number 5 is asking for the range. That's how high and how low. You always start with how low. So this would go down to negative infinity, and this would go up to positive infinity. So number 5 would be letter D. Number 6, it's kind of beneficial that I graphed it up here. Remember I said the vertex is 1 to the right, down 3. So that point right there is 1, negative 3. So how low does it go? Negative 3. How high does it go? Infinity. And so that would be letter A. Number 7, remember the way that it's written actually is f of g of negative 2, which just means Phil Collins inside out. So we're going to take negative 2, put it into the equation defined by g, which is right here. So that would be 2 times negative 2, and we would get negative 4. Then we take this out, replace it with what it equals, negative 4, and then we'd plug that into the equation defined by f, which is right here. So if we went 2 times negative 4 squared plus 3, we'd get 16 times 2 is 32, plus 5 is 35, which is letter D. Next problem is a little more abstract. We literally are going to take f of x, which is this stuff, and put it right in there, still maintaining the inside-out theme. But now we got to put this into the equation defined by letter G wherever x pops up, and that would be right here. So we got to take x plus 3, square it, and then subtract 2. Back in the old days, you were taught, don't you dare, remember, 2 plus 3 is 5, 5 squared is 25. We know this is 25. Don't you dare square that individually, That'd be 4 plus 9, which does not equal 25. So I'm saying don't distribute that squared to these two things. This is actually a FOIL problem where you have to literally square it. So I'm going to FOIL this and put my answer up here. So x squared outside is 3x, inside is 3x, so that's 6x. 3 times 3 is 9, then minus 2. So this would make a 7. So that would match with letter B. Okay, number 9. Write the formula for the inverse function for this function. Well, the first thing you do is you put that, make it y. Then you take the x and the y and you literally invert them. Then you solve for y. So I'm going to add 3, add 3. I'm going to flip this around. So it's 2y equals x plus 3. Divide by 2, divide by 2. So I'd get y equals x plus 3 all over 2, but then we'd have to replace this with the inverse function notation. So we'd look for that. And number 9 would be letter C. Number 10. This problem says, because of recent cutbacks, the company's marketing budget of $23,000 is cut by 13.5%. What is the new budget? Well, this is just basic math 101, to be honest with you. We're going to take 23,000. We're going to multiply it by this, but that as a percent would be 0.0135. I'm going to hit pause a second. So I just got my calculator and I multiplied this all out, and that would give us 3,105. Now remember, this is what it was cut by. So we simply need to subtract 3,105 from 23,000, and that would give us letter C. All right, number 11 says identify the domain of this function. Well, remember, we're looking for two things. You can't have square roots of negatives, and you cannot have zeros in your denominator. It's okay to have a 0 in your numerator. You just can't have it in your denominator, which tells us don't worry about the numerator. Also, the domain means x. What's f of x? That equals y, so we're not going to worry about that. This is telling us put all your concentration right in here. So this would be x minus 3, x plus 3. And we'd say, aha, x cannot equal 3 and x cannot equal negative 3. Because that, if I put that in there, that'd cause that to be a 0. If I put negative 3 right there, that would cause this to be a 0. But visually speaking, I need to look at it and say, these are the things that x cannot be. Just these two things. But they can be anything else in here, and anything else in here, and anything else in here. So how do I explain this space? Negative infinity all the way up to negative 3. But because it cannot be negative 3, I have to use parentheses, not brackets. Together with, or the union of, this space, negative 3 all the way to 3, and one more space over here, 3 all the way to infinity. All right, that ends part 1.